Our gardens and the plants that we choose to grow in them adjust to a much slower pace in the crisp, cold winter months. With the arrival of the first frosts, tender plants were moved into the greenhouse to keep them safe, and only the most resilient of evergreen plants and hardy shrubs and perennials were left outside to tolerate these colder conditions. At this time of year, jobs in the garden are few and far between. But it's now mid-February, and if you look closely in the garden at the details, you'll see signs of new life emerging. The days are gradually getting longer. Bulbs are pushing up through the surface of the soil, and there are buds on the branches of trees and shrubs. So it is time for us gardeners to get outside and start tending to our gardens again. In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 jobs that you can do in the garden in February to help it look happier and healthier for the coming spring and summer months. Now, our first gardening job for February is pruning deciduous trees and shrubs. Now, deciduous just means plants that lose their leaves in winter, and now is the perfect time to prune them because they are in a dormant state. That's to say there's no fluid moving up and down the stems, so it's going to be the best time to prune them. Now I'm going to cut this side shoot right back as flush as I can to the main branch, and that's going to discourage growth from re-emerging here because I've left no growth points. I've left what's called a collar so that this scar on the tree can heal over nicely and we shouldn't get any new growth here. But as well as discouraging growth, you can also encourage growth where you want it to happen. So on this branch, I'm going to leave some of these old leaf scars so that there will be new growth in the direction that I want it to appear. So you can see here, there's a bud to one side of the cut, and this should be the new point where this year's growth will emerge from, which is going to encourage lots of foliage where I want it to be. And this is my tree cut back nice and hard and shaped for the coming season. Now these same principles apply roughly to all deciduous shrubs and trees, and even to roses. You can see I'm cutting this wall-trained rose back, again, to a bud that's growing in the direction that I want it to grow. And then I've tied in this branch, which means all of the horizontal growth is reappearing, ready as the days are getting longer. Now job number 2 in your garden in February is dividing large clumps of herbaceous perennials. You can do this just using a trowel, and you're going to split the root zone into as many clumps as you want. Here I'm going to split this into 2 because this geranium has outgrown the space in this raised bed. I'm just using a trowel. I'm going to split that root zone in half, cut away some of the roots, and this is going to keep the main plant much more manageable and much more in proportion to the area. But the added bonus is each division, each clump of roots that I pull away will grow into a new plant. This is something I can plant out somewhere else in the garden or pot on and share with friends and family. This method of dividing herbaceous perennials works on a wide array of plants. Plants like this herbaceous Libertia grandiflora, which is a grass-like perennial, but also for hardy begonias. I just break away a chunk of that rhizome that's creeping over the top of the soil and I get more plants for free. With all of your garden pruning and divisions done in February, it's time to top dress your pots and mulch your borders. Now top dressing pots is going to add a bit of extra feed, and it's going to cover any exposed roots. Now I'm just doing it around this rose here. It's going to feed it, but it just makes it look so much tidier for the start of the season. Now I'm just using a peat-free multi-purpose compost, but you can use well-rotted manure as well. Just choose the mulch of your preference. I also like to mulch the borders because this is going to tidy up the borders, add feed for all of that early growth, and it also protects the root zones of plants that are in these borders in case we get any late frosts. Our 4th gardening job for February is to clear any debris and leaf litter from ponds or water features. Through winter and autumn, leaves fall from the trees, they can get blown around the garden, and any that land in your ponds will decay and degrade the water quality and starve it of oxygen, which won't be good, especially if it's a wildlife pond. So just remove any fallen leaves. You can get a net and fish out any that are a bit deeper, and that's just going to keep it as healthy as possible. Now this is a wildlife pond that I built last spring, so I'm hoping that we get frog spawn this year. Any debris that I do remove, I'm just going to put to the side of the pond, so if there is any wildlife living on it, it's going to have plenty of time to crawl back into the water. our fifth and final gardening job for February, which is by far my favourite, is sowing seeds. Sowing seeds is a great way, if you're on a budget, to grow a garden full of weird and wonderful plants that you're probably unlikely to be able to get at your local garden centre. Now, my process for sowing seeds is to sow into a good quality, peat-free seed compost or a sieved multi-purpose compost. Then I sow my seeds onto the surface of the soil. Today, we're going to be sowing seeds for Cobea scandens, or the cup and saucer vine. February is a really good time to sow seeds for this plant because it's a climber that if you sow it early enough, it gets a head start, and by the time you plant it out, it's really prolific for the coming season. Now, these are quite large seeds, so they're really easy to sow, and it's really easy to check that you're spacing them out nicely around the surface of the pot because you don't want to overcrowd the seedlings once they germinate. So I just spread them out, make sure they've each got a nice bit of space, and then I cover to the appropriate depth. Just follow the instructions on the seed packets from wherever you source your seeds. Don't forget, we do have a seed shop online. Then I firm down the soil and label my pot. You might think that you're going to remember what seed you've sown, but if you start growing lots of plants from seed, you will easily forget which is which, and it takes a couple of seconds to label a pot. So be sure to do that, and it's also a good tip to write the date that you've sowed the seeds, so you know how long they've taken to germinate. These then go into a heated propagator in my greenhouse, ready to germinate in the coming weeks. Not only is growing plants from seed great if you're on a budget, but it's a real uplifting task to do in winter months to help us plan for spring. It really creates hope. You're planning for the future, and all of these tiny seedlings will grow into big, beautiful plants in your garden in the spring and summer months. If you found this video useful, please hit subscribe. It's the easiest way to support this channel and to keep the community growing. Don't forget, we've got an online plant and seed shop at growparadise.co.uk, and we deliver all over the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.